Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's session, Creating Inclusive Workplaces for Disabled Employees, Moving Beyond Compliance. For those that don't know me, my name's Antonio Fletcher. I'm head of the employment law team here at Whitehead Moncton. I'm delighted to be joined by Veronica Fox, who's our senior consultant at Eclipse HR, and a very special guest, Andrew Parker, Head of People and Culture at LifeSearch. Those who were present at our seminar in Canterbury last year will remember that we started a discussion then around disability and accessibility within the workforce. When we were lucky enough to be joined by Geoffrey Burke, who is the founder of Access Able, as well as a number of other speakers and contributors. From our perspective, it was important that the dialogue continued this year for a number of reasons. Firstly, because, as we will hear from Andrew, there is significant value to be gained for an organisation in creating a workplace that is genuinely inclusive and accessible to all. Secondly, the employment lawyer in me feels the need to point out that there are more disability-related claims in the employment tribunal than claims relating to all other protected characteristics under the Equality Act combined. And then thirdly, but perhaps most importantly, there is obviously the human value in creating genuinely positive workplaces where people of all backgrounds have a platform from which they can contribute and create their own success. Our plan for the session today is quite a simple one. Veronica will kick us off by outlining some key HR principles applicable to creating an inclusive workforce, following which I'll be asking Andrew some questions about his experiences and the culture he's helped to develop at LifeSearch, and I'll give Andrew more of an intro just before we move on to that section. At the end, hopefully, we'll have time for some Q&A before we wrap the session up as well. So without further ado, Veronica, over to you.
Thank you very much, Antonio. And as we were looking at pulling together this important subject, the talking points that I felt that were quite useful to bear in mind, and also touching upon something that Antonio's in his introduction has touched upon from an employment tribunal perspective. But if I look at the set in the HR context beyond the legal minimum, 24% of the UK working age population is disabled, so that's around 16 million people. So that makes the disability the largest protected characteristic in the labour market. I think that supports what Antonio has just referred to there in terms of the largest proportion in employment tribunal claims. An estimated 5.5 million disabled people now work in the UK. And the data shows that nearly a third, so that's 31% of 5.6 million disabled people currently in work, are doing so part-time. Now, whether that's through choice, again, that's a statistic I think that's useful for us to bear in mind. Disabled people are more likely to be self-employed, work in the public sector or smaller organisations, and more likely to be in junior roles. Again, that could be a choice, but again, looking at some of the audience on the webinar today, you may actually disagree with that. Compliance is the baseline. Inclusion is about how people experienced work on day-to-day. So from a people perspective, the HR role is to support managers and to support businesses to do the right thing confidently, for not fear of getting it wrong. In 2020, the UK disability pay gap stood at 12.7%, meaning disabled employees earned on average £2 less than non-disabled employee. So just giving you some context there, the gap is widest for employees with autism, that's 27.9%, epilepsy, 26.9%, and severe or specific learning difficulties is 20.3%. So we often talk about reasonable adjustments in practice. They can be viewed as routine management tools and not exceptional concessions. what we'll find, and again, there will be lots of informative discussions that Antonio and Andrew in particular will draw upon. Many adjustments are low cost. They can be formal and benefit the wider team in terms of flexibility, clear communication and technology tools. I've certainly been privileged to work with many individuals who have been supported in that guise over the last 3 decades. So focus really should be on removing workplace barriers, not fixing the individual. So what we're looking to do within the workplace is to have confident manager conversations. And I would say that extends out to employees as well, to peers. A key HR challenge is helping managers feel comfortable having adjustment conversations. And again, I'm looking forward to hearing what Andrew will explore in the successes that LifeSearch has had in that regard. These should be ongoing two-way discussions, not just one-offs, medicalised conversation. That's just day to day, as we are, as you would with any colleague. We're just extending that to how that actually reaches to that particular individual. So in terms of inclusion, recruitment and onboarding, under the Equality Act, employers have a duty to make reasonable adjustments for employees with disabilities. This applies not only in the workplace, but it also applies in recruitment and selection. So before that employee becomes an employee, that would be from a candidate perspective as well. So do bear in mind that failure to make these adjustments could be considered discriminatory, and businesses should be diligent in providing accommodations that allow disabled individuals to compete fairly for job opportunities. No doubt, and I have a little bit of an idea of what's coming, so it's useful to know there'll be inclusive interview practices or practices in general in that regard. It's not just the legal aspect here, but it's the immoral approach that you would want to see. So in terms of the benefits for beyond the legal minimum, it looks at the retention, well-being and productivity and the impact it has. So disabled people are more likely to leave work due to ill health, with health-related inactivity now one of the largest drivers of economic inactivity in the UK. And as we all know, the workforce is ageing and people are living longer. So what can and should we be doing to be more inclusive in the workplace and beyond? Over 1 in 5 working age adults is now economically inactive, largely due to health conditions and costing, which costs employers as well through high turnover, increased absence, and also loss of skills and expertise, which is a pity. Inclusive workplaces certainly outperform minimum compliance. And I think Andrew didn't know that I was going to say this, but I had a little look to remind myself of LifeSearch. They're certainly incredibly proud to share that they have been shortlisted for the best approach to diversity, equity, inclusion and belonging at the UK National Contact Centre Awards 2026. Congratulations, Andrew, and to your colleagues. These awards are the longest running and most respected programme in the UK contact centre industry, recognising that organisations make a real difference for their people and their customers. So in terms of inclusive workplaces outperforming minimum compliance, the Health and Safety Executive, HSE, confirms that inclusive workplaces can deliver increased productivity, improved retention, access to wider skills and experience, greater engagement and innovation. The government-backed LACA Employer Guide highlights that organisations embracing inclusion as a core strategy rather than a compliance are better placed to compete for talent, improve performance, strengthen employee engagement and trust. So why does this matter? Compliance alone, we've talked about very briefly, basic reasonable adjustment, has not just resulted in an increase in disabled people at work. Employers who go further through inclusive design, flexibility and proactive approach can access a much wider talent pool. Pay gaps persist even after adjusting for qualifications, occupation and geography, pointing to systemic workplace barriers, not capability. Inclusive career development and progressive practices are therefore a business and equity issue, again, not just a legal one. Compliance alone, basic reasonable adjustments, has not resulted in an increase in disabled people at work. but employees who go further through inclusive design, flexibility and proactive support can access a much wider source of talent. So strategic takeaways from employers. What does the data show? It shows that legal compliance alone has not addressed employment, pay or wellbeing gaps. Disabled workers represent a large underutilised talent pool. And inclusive workplaces are linked to better productivity, retention and engagement outcomes. So who better now than to tell us more in practice of what that looks like in practice is Andrew Parker and Antonio Fletcher. Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Veronica. So yes, just before Andrew and I move into our session, I'd like to provide a bit of context as to who LifeSearch are and why I've invited Andrew to share his expertise and insights with us today. So LifeSearch was launched in 1998 by Tom Bakery and Arthur Davies. The mission being to act as protection advisors that would do the right things by the customer and provide protection to families. Since then, LifeSearch has gone on to protect nearly 1 million families and businesses and over 2 million individuals, working alongside insurers big and small to find the best cover to fit the customer's needs. That's only part of the picture, though. I've had the pleasure of working alongside the team at LifeSearch for nearly 20 years now, and what has always struck me is how innovative and forward-thinking they are as a business. Tom is still very much part of the organisation, now acting as chair. And the ethos that he has been keen to install from the outset is very much still present now. It's very clear in all that they do that they care about their customers, about their internal team, and also about succeeding as a business, because clearly that is an important part of the jigsaw too. Andrew's been part of the team for over 20 years, filling the head of people and culture team for a significant part of that time. During which, amongst many accolades, and Veronica's mentioned one just now, LifeSearch also has achieved a top 3 placing in the Sunday Times list of best places to work. He's therefore brilliantly placed to share his insights and experiences with us today. So welcome, Andrew, and thank you very much for agreeing to collaborate with us on this.
No problem at all, Antonio. Thank you for that very warm introduction, and afternoon, everybody.
Well, kicking things off straight away, can you give us a bit of an insight about how LifeSearch approaches recruitment in a way that genuinely welcomes disabled candidates, and what changes have had the biggest impact on attracting and retaining that diverse talent that you have?
Yeah, so we went really kind of right back to basics, and we started right at the very beginning of the recruitment process. So by looking at job ads, so does the language we use, does the tone of voice that we have, are the responsibilities of the role that we're kind of promoting in the job ads, do they resonate with people? Are they the right kind of hooks, to try and catch people? Once we then went through that, we then had to work with our leadership team to agree that every role that we have in our business will always be advertised as full-time, part-time, office-based, remote or hybrid. And I know for some businesses that might be a bit of a stretch, and it was a bit of a slog for us to get that kind of agreement, but we felt that was the right thing. So yeah, looking at hours, looking at locations. Next up, I think a theme of this is going to be your leadership capability. We have about 65 people in our business that have people leadership responsibility. So we've spent an awful lot of time and money upskilling them on various topics, not just to do with the kind of EDI agenda, but many things. But yeah, particularly focused on inclusive recruitment processes, fair decision making, reasonable adjustments that are required, both from a selection process right through to being employed, unconscious bias, broader ED&I training. So really helped our leaders and supported them with kind of getting to grips with this. And I guess then turning to the process itself, as Veronica was talking about there, real transparency with candidates about every stage of the process. So this is what we're going to take you through. This is how long it might take. These elements are likely to be in person, others online, others in writing. But if that doesn't work for you, or you need something different, please just tell us and we'll make those adjustments for you. A very recent example was a candidate who'd applied, who's a wheelchair user. So we made sure that for the in-person part of the selection process that we had a chaperone downstairs, in the reception area to meet that candidate, brought them up in the lifts. We made sure that the desk height and was appropriate for them. So just everything that candidate might engage with whilst they were with us that afternoon, we made sure worked for them. And as much as we love and trust our leaders to get things right, we do have a recruiter in my team who oversees the whole process and engages with those candidates right through from the first review of the CV right through to their first day, and where they do have any extra requirements or any extra needs, Sophie makes sure that they're catered for throughout that process. So we just went right back to basics, kind of pulled the whole thing apart, put it back together again in what we think are fair and inclusive ways.
And actually, there's a couple of things that you've mentioned there that I think it's good to sort of focus on in particular. And one actually resonated with me because it was part of our discussions that we actually had last year, and that's about particularly with disabled employees, but I think it also applies to everyone, is just sort of being really clear with what to expect. And for a disabled person, for example, who might be a wheelchair user or have mobility issues, being really aware of the environment that they're going into, what it's going to look like from the moment they arrive, just the physical environment that they will come across in the location where they're being interviewed, for example, is so important because it takes away so many of the challenges or the concerns about challenges that person might have. So that clarity, I think, is great, I think, and sort of promotes that accessibility and inclusivity.
And through on our careers website, which we're just doing a new version of, but we have got almost video tours of each of our 3 offices, so that candidates can watch this video and actually kind of see what it looks like. But where candidates have expressed the fact that they may have further needs, Sophie will take them through that and in effect describe the office. So for that candidate I mentioned who is a wheelchair user, she noted that somebody will meet you downstairs at the ground floor reception at 5 to 11, and that's fully accessible with a ramp. They'll meet you there. They'll take you up in the lift to our office, which is on the 3rd floor. We'll take you through to the main office. There's a wide double doorway that you'll go through, etc., etc., etc. So just describe the office, and what to expect, so that there weren't hopefully any shocks or surprises for that candidate.
Brilliant. And I mean, I think it's important to bear in mind that all of us are nervous and sometimes concerned about what to expect when we go to an interview. So for someone who may have mobility issues, that's just heightening to not having that certainty is heightening the concerns and that they might have. So taking that away really does create that level playing field that we all would have from sort of normal interview preparation. So that's really positive.
And I think also allows them perhaps to reinvest that energy in doing their very best in the selection process.
Exactly.
So, focusing on the tasks, hopefully feeling a lot more relaxed, or perhaps just thinking, okay, this is a pretty decent employer. I like the look and the sound of this place. I'm going to, I feel a lot more relaxed now to kind of show my very best. So that's good for them as well as it is us.
Brilliant. And you mentioned about the adverts and the way you put jobs out to the wider public. Do you try and diversify the means of where you advertise, for example, where you've got a role, if you can?
We try to. I suppose our bread and butter is through the obvious job boards, LinkedIn, Indeed, all those kind of places. But we have over the years had a number of different partnerships with other job boards, but also with recruiters. So there was slightly off topic perhaps, but the big job in our business, as it were, is being a telephone-based sales advisor. That often lends itself more to attracting men than women. Our advisor force is 79% male. We just cannot crack that. We've tried everything we can think of. So 2 years ago, we partnered with a specialist recruiter, and they focus purely on finding jobs in financial services for women. So we piloted a project with them, to try and start to redress some of that balance. So I guess we've got headcount goals to hit, we've got revenue goals to hit, so we just need this flow of people coming through. Absolutely, the diversity program does underpin that.
Brilliant. Excellent. And then the final point I just wanted to touch on from what you said is there around the training for your leaders and those that have that management responsibility. And I think it's certainly something that we're encouraging people to look at this point in time because of, for example, all the employment law changes that are coming in and the difference that that will have on how how people need to look at people management or even prioritize people management more than some have. Let's put it that way. But clearly, empowered managers or empowered leaders, are an asset at any time and help those around them.
Yeah, we try to almost have a somewhat, I guess, kind of self-employed philosophy for our leaders that, you are a leader of Life Search, but actually this bit of it over here, this team that you run, whether it be a sales team, a customer service team, a change function, this is your world, to lead. We want you to feel almost kind of self-employed. So if you are running your own business, surely you would want to be the best leader of those people. Surely you'd want to have the best retention rates. Surely you'd want to have the greatest output, wouldn't you? Dear Mr. or Mrs. Leader. So actually, by following these kind of key principles, this training, this guidance, it's going to help you become that. So that philosophy tends to work with our leadership group. But we also try to kind of codify that a little bit. When 2 years ago we created something called the Leadership Charter, which in effect is the 10 key principles of being a Life Search leader. So by having that name in your job title, you will lead in this fashion. And things like the diversity program are all kind of woven into that, so it is a non-negotiable for our leadership team.
Brilliant. Yeah, super. Okay, I'll move on to the next question I wanted to ask you. It's about flexible working and workplace adjustments. They're often discussed in principle, but what's worked well in practice at Life Search, and where have you had to adapt your approach over time?
Yeah, I think this has been a bit of a moving feast for an awfully long time for us, and I'm sure many firms. So I think we first piloted home working, as we used to call it before, flexible working and remote working in about 2007. So one of our first colleagues said, can I work from home? Here's why. We said, fine, let's give it a bash. And now 20% of our team, about 80 people, now have permanent home working contracts. And the majority of those are because of either personal health challenges, disability, caring responsibilities, or just other personal circumstances that means that frequent time in one of our offices isn't possible or reasonable. So we want to keep good people in our business. So let's see what we can do, to do that. Going back to the recruitment point, we try not to restrict ourselves by location. So whilst we have 3 main offices in London, Leeds and Milton Keynes, our 400 colleagues now stretch from Bournemouth in the south to Newcastle in the north and everywhere in between. So we really want the best talent to join us. So again, that was another leadership adaptation. Many leaders were on board with it, going back to that self-employed philosophy. Yes, I want my team to be the best performing, therefore I want to have the best talent. Others, not so much. Home working, don't like it, don't want to do it. No, flexible working, no, don't want that. I need this person sat in front of me between the hours of 9 to 5 so I can do You have to see exactly what they're up to. Excuse me. So we really had to go through another, I guess, kind of training approach, you with leaders to explain why, well, they can't, be that attracting best talent, retention, stretching company goals, trying to be a more progressive employer, all of those kind of things. So it's been a process, and then the pandemic threw in some further challenges. So yeah, we've had to really respond with a much clearer, kind of process for looking at workplace adjustments, clearer decision making, more transparency. So yeah, we had to kind of really, I guess, grow up that policy. So from its slightly kind of ramshackle beginnings, it needed to be a lot more organised. So yeah, we focused on that, but then also things that we've done in practice. We're a lot less prescriptive, I guess, about things needing to be in person. Things can be done online, things can be done remotely. We've introduced things like quiet zones in our offices, prayer spaces, so just to try and make our office space, when colleagues are there, just a lot more inclusive.
Yeah, and I think that's important, where where you're asking people to spend a lot of time at a place of work, that as much as any place of work can be, obviously some environments are easier to control and perhaps just generally nicer than others, but it needs to be a place that people, as much as possible, are happy going to and comfortable being in, and that can mean lots of different things for lots of different people. So you probably can't tick every box for every person, but what you can do, it's always a good idea to try and to listen to what people want and need.
Yeah, and I think that's very true. I think I always think like air conditioning is like the most volatile topic in any office. Somebody finds it too hot, somebody finds it too cold.
Certainly is in ours, yeah.
Somebody would like to have the radio on gently at the end of the pod whilst they're working. Others want stone cold silence. There's an advisor with a headset on, having a loud 25-minute energized conversation with a client about their insurance needs. But in a hybrid office, the person next to them is one of our IT programmers who's just trying desperately hard to focus on a piece of code. So yeah, how do you satisfy all of that? So yeah, I think it's about shared standards, agreed standards, comes back to company values and behaviors, which we'll touch on I think a bit later. But yeah, just creating a space that works for most people, or again, just creating that flexibility that says, if the tasks you have today or the meetings you have today would not be best served by being in the office, be somewhere else.
Yeah. And I mean, I think it's fair to say the pandemic has taught us a lot about how to work in a flexible, hybrid kind of way, and those managers that perhaps sort of looking back 8 or 9 years ago were very skeptical about anything to do with home working, and the need to hover over others to make sure that they were doing what was required, have probably learnt themselves that actually as long as things are done in the right way, it works, and you can trust those around you. Or to be fair, you need to trust those around you if you're going to be successful. Let's take the positives from that experience where we can.
You won't mind me sharing this at all, but Tom, our founder and chair that you mentioned earlier, who you know well, Antonio, I remember when we first started home working, like I say, like back in the early or late 2000s, 2007, 8, 9, I needed to be at home for a utility appointment. I know something was being delivered and I couldn't work it around it. So I remember emailing Tom and just saying, do you mind if I work from home tomorrow afternoon? I really have to. The reply was something like, okay, but just make sure it's productive. To then about 6 months ago, Tom was in one of the offices and he was like, I had a really productive morning this morning. I was sat at home in bed in my pajamas with a cup of coffee on my laptop and I absolutely hammered through my emails. Just like the whole U-turn of that sort of 20-year process.
Yeah. Well, that sounds very much like Tom. I can imagine him, yes, in his pajamas rattling off his email. So yeah. That's a mental site I will struggle to remove for the rest of the day.
Just a last thoughts on that, perhaps. I suppose is almost, we're drifting slightly off topic a bit, but a conversation I've been having with quite a lot of leaders this week on through some roadshows we're doing is about performance. It kind of covers many things. Again, just kind of focusing on our sales team, that is the bread and butter of our business. Those leaders are very good at managing technical performance. You've not picked up the phone enough today. You've not dialed out enough times. You've not had enough sales conversations with clients. But then when it comes to things like, your standards haven't been good enough in this area, or you haven't. I think you probably should have been in the office for that particular day because there was an essential meeting happening. You weren't there. They just seem to struggle sometimes with those things that aren't nuts and bolts, on a Power BI dashboard. So, that's an ongoing piece of work just to help leaders understand that, performance, capability, conduct is a broad thing.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting observation actually, because where you have as a manager or as a leader, where you have those statistics, if you like, that you can point to and rely on, and that you can fall back on during that awkward conversation if you need to. It is quite different to having a more, if you like, subjective kind of discussion about generalized performance, and whether it feels that little bit more personal if you're having that conversation with someone based on your experiences of their work rather than what their statistics show. It is always quite difficult to encourage that kind of conversation. And I think it's, let's say culturally perhaps a difficult conversation to have. If you think of the average Brit stereotype is quite a reserved person who doesn't like a great deal of confrontation, and you compare that to perhaps other cultures where people are significantly more direct and happy having very direct, awkward conversations in everyday life. Perhaps it's another string to the bow of diversity, where actually we can glean things from other cultures and other approaches to say actually it's okay to have that conversation if you need to have it, as long as you do it in the right way, of course.
And I almost think it's the human reaction in that moment by the leader that's so important. I suppose our overarching culture program is something that I called Moments That Matter. I stole this from something somebody said at a conference 2 or 3 years ago. So if anybody on the call here wants to steal it from me, you're very welcome, because I didn't come up with it. But in this talk, she was saying about how in your work life, there are just really important moments that matter. Maybe your leader is having a conversation with you about your performance, and you suddenly feel brave enough to open up about the fact that you are struggling with a health issue, or your mental health has been very poor, or there's a domestic abuse situation going on at home. Your leader's reaction in that moment is absolutely essential to that colleague's engagement with that leader, their team, their business. If it is a bit of a closed door, don't know how to cope with this, don't know how to have this conversation, go and talk to HR, you might well have lost that colleague. But actually, if in that moment, the leader just drops their shoulders, the formal agenda is put to one side, and they actually just have a human conversation about what's going on, that will take you much, much further. But that's a difficult thing to, for leaders to be able to do sometimes. So those moments that matter.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot to be said about creating a safe work environment for people, that they're not afraid to have those conversations and open up to those around them, and in particular the person who may be their direct manager, because it is important for everyone, particularly actually for the individual involved, that they're able to share some of the challenges that they have, because then that enables resolutions to be found, Whereas if they're never discussed and never addressed, then they never will be. So yeah, brilliant. Okay, so it's an interesting question when we talk about reasonable adjustments and what goes on around those. And obviously, reasonable adjustments from a legal perspective need to be made to help an individual overcome, particular difficulties or challenges that they may have as a result of a disability, and provide them with a level playing field compared to others. So it's quite individualized. How do you try and move away from a sort of one size fits all when it comes to adjustments compared to actually meeting someone's individual needs?
Yeah, this has been a process of work, really. So yeah, we used to have so again, we try to kind of codify it to use that word into a formalized process. So we try and badge this under kind of flexible working. So the fact that I may need to work fewer hours, or I may need to change my hours, or I need to work in different locations at different times, and then that can even drift into I need different equipment to do my job. But we try and badge it under flexible working. So I suppose flexibility from what you might describe as the norm. So yeah, there's a designed process which is published on our intranet for every colleague and leader to follow. There is genuine consultation between the leader and that colleague as to the adjustments that they're asking for. Real engagement as to why they need the proposed changes. How is it? How do you feel it's going to improve, or at least kind of maintain your performance? What are the circumstances that are causing you to make this request? What could you see perhaps going wrong? What are the risks, for you as the colleague and us as the business, if this adjustment doesn't work out? So we go through a full, discussion that's well documented. That then comes forward to one of their HR business partners for them to review. I suppose my starting position is always, can we say yes? That's a cultural, philosophical thing, but we try really hard to say yes. And sometimes where there is a lack of consensus from perhaps the leader, the business partner, me, other seniors, we'll even send it upstairs to the exco team and say, we need a fourth or fifth opinion on this, to almost approve it. And of course, sometimes requests are unreasonable because of the cost of them, the very specific nature of the role that somebody might have, maybe impacts on partners or insurers. So if our starting position is, let's say yes, if we're on the fence, we'll always pilot it. Let's give it a go for the next 3 months and then review it, and very happily maintain it from there if it's working. Or actually, we just don't think that's going to work. So let's compromise, and rather than sacrificing 10 hours a week, can we just reduce it by 5 hours as a starting point, and let's see what kind of impact that might have. So getting something agreed, and then the leader and the business partner monitoring the impact of that, keeping things under review, and we have various tools to do that, be that monthly one-to-ones, appraisals, absence review meetings, all kinds of things, keeping it under review, but with the aim to maintain it if it continues working for everybody.
And I think it is fair to note that you can't do everything for everyone. The basic legal test is obviously the keys in the name. It's reasonable adjustments. Sometimes you can go above and beyond, and you can aim to do a bit more, and I think that's right. But I think you have to also accept to a certain degree that you can't do everything for everyone. And that's that can be challenging, but it's also a process of managing the expectation from the individual's perspective about what you can do. And sort of resources obviously play a significant part in that, because businesses, if I think of smaller businesses in particular, may not have resources to do very much at all, but they must do what what they can. And I think the attitude of saying yes or starting with a desire to want to say yes is the correct one, because even from a legal perspective, it's not that you could have made 10 reasonable adjustments and you make 9 and none of them work, that gets you off the hook. If you've not made all 10, you've got a potential claim against you, from a legal perspective. So you do need to, sort of try and approach it with a can-do attitude, whilst being, whilst recognizing that you can't do everything.
And one such reasonable adjustment, which is always sticks in my mind, which you've supported us with, Antonio, somebody in a customer service role. So, receiving inbound calls, making outbound calls, progressing a pipeline of applications. One of the reasonable adjustments they put forward was to no longer receive inbound phone calls. They wanted all inbound phone calls to them blocked. That is unreasonable, because that's a fundamental part of the customer service job. The potential impacts of that in terms of call times, drifting out of SLAs, not meeting contractual obligations with partners in terms of how quickly and well their customers are being handled. The impacts that then has on the other colleagues in the team that have to then take more inbound calls, whilst at the same time they've got their own body of work to be moving through each day. That was an unreasonable request. We met many others for this particular colleague, but that one just was not reasonable, so we said no.
And sometimes you do have to do that. Okay. So in terms of your leaders, and giving them what they need in order to have those confident, compassionate conversations about disability and adjustments, what steps have you taken to help them be equipped to do so, particularly where people are feeling unsure or anxious about getting it wrong?
I guess there's two things we've done kind of each internally and externally. So about 18 months or so ago, I restructured my team to adopt an HR business partner model, which we'd never had before. So we brought in 2 incredibly good, experienced HR business partners. They've been really fundamental in the last 18 months. In driving up standards, and we'll touch on some of these stats in a second, I'm sure. But they have their own roster of leaders that they work with. They meet with them at least monthly, if not more frequently, on when there are live topics and ER cases at hand. But setting incredibly clear standards and expectations and holding those leaders to account to delivering them. We've invested an awful lot in our leadership development programs. We've, I think, delivered 6 modules in the last 12 months. On all different kinds of topics, but we've really refocused our learning and development team on leadership upskilling. And then we've been using external resources a lot. So a year ago, we partnered with an organisation called Inclusive Employers. So they've been our support almost in the background, rubber stamping our ED&I strategy. Looking at everything through from communications to networking groups to our dashboard, our measures, and really kind of supporting us from a position of experience. That's been really invaluable. That then in turn has moved through to the leadership team, where they've delivered some direct training as well. And then with partnerships with different charities, different groups, notably we've been doing a lot of work with autism and neurodiversity. An organisation called Sunshine, based in Milton Keynes, have been really helpful in just helping us as an employer understand kind of what we could and should be doing. Those expectations have then flowed through to our leadership team, but then also external mediators and occupational health consultants, something that we've not really engaged with particularly much, but as perhaps some of the recent ER cases have become really quite complex and outside of our comfort zone, bringing in an external mediator who is neurodiverse, supporting a colleague that is neurodiverse, that was really eye-opening for the leadership in that area, and for us in terms of some of the things that we could and should be doing. So really relying on external support and expertise as well as our own.
Brilliant. And I mean, I think it's fair to say that actually well, where we speak of charities and particular organisations, they can be accessed by any kind of organisation, by any by a smaller business, by businesses that actually don't, or organisations that don't actually have a lot of resource to invest financially. There is support out there that can be accessed either affordably or actually without cost, because some of the where we talk about charities, it's their charitable purpose and the reason they exist, and have funds that they collect to help people integrate within workforces and so on. So whilst I'm sure some resources come at a cost, others very much don't. And I think it's important that people are aware of the ability to access that kind of expertise from some charities and organisations that are geared up towards making places more inclusive, promoting understanding and knowledge within employers. I think that's important point to note, actually, that sometimes as perhaps as a smaller business or a school, you kind of think, well, actually the resource just simply isn't there, but it might well be in different forms. I just wanted to touch actually on the slide that we've got up at the moment that actually talks about a lot of the visible and the measurable improvements that there are in terms of having a focus that makes you more inclusive. Did you want to touch on a couple of them, Andrew, and just give an illustration of how it's benefited the business?
And I suppose as effusive as I've been on this topic, we are still running a business. That is why I'm employed. That's why I'm employed. I'm running a business, so everything needs to be kind of measured and tracked, and I get scrutiny, as I should, from the exco. Why do I want to spend a few £100 on this? What is that piece of training to the leadership team going to deliver? So these stats are pretty much just over the last year or so, as that business partner model, especially that I talked about, has really become embedded. I guess, well, why bother with any of this stuff? Why go beyond compliance, to use the title of the session? Well, tangible, genuine impact on our business. Resignations down, absences down, customer scores improved, and I think most importantly, perhaps those bottom right three, as I'm looking at it, the impact it's having on the people that we serve, the customers that we protect with various insurance policies, 17% increase from 24 to 25, and the one to the left of that, actually, I think I'm most proudest of, bit of industry jargon, but non-standard terms. So when you apply for, let's say, a life insurance policy or a critical illness policy, and the insurance company, be it Legal and General, Vitality, whomever it is, can't offer you that standard premium, perhaps because of some health circumstances, some conditions that you've got. Actually, the fact that we are now protecting more people with those different circumstances, that's really positive for us, because our purpose statement as a business is to protect people properly. And so that really indicates that we are protecting people properly. We're finding them the right insurance policy that means they are protected, albeit it's costing them a little bit more. But by having a richer, more diverse, engaged workforce that wants to do good work for our customers, that's really coming through in our MI as well.
Yeah, and I suppose touching on that group, I mean, those are probably in many cases the people that are most in need of protection that otherwise wouldn't either wouldn't be able to access it or might be sort of paying over the odds if they weren't able to rely on your support. So it's great to see the benefit trickling down. I mean, I think those are sort of very clear statistics in terms of actually showing that if you do go that extra mile, you get a return for doing so. So yeah, no, thank you for sharing those with us in particular. Moving on, from your experiences at LifeSearch, what does actually, when we talk about moving beyond legal compliance to a genuinely inclusive practice, what does it look like in day-to-day people management?
Gosh, it can mean a lot, I think. I guess if we take a step back from that, I guess the way I look at this, and maybe that answer I gave about flexible, reasonable adjustments, rather, starting from a position of saying yes. I think as an organisation, whatever your size, however many your colleagues, whatever your budgets are, there's almost a kind of a cultural, kind of philosophical point that actually we do want to do more. Of course, we have to take compliance as the baseline, but actually perhaps because of our culture, our business values, whatever it may be, we just want to do more. We want to be a business that gives opportunities to as many people as possible. We want to bring in the broadest demographic of folks that we can. We know, going back to Veronica's points earlier, life can already be incredibly tough and complex for people, either not getting into work or not being paid as well as they should. So actually, can we just play a small part in helping turn that tide? Can we create opportunities for people, to work in a really decent business? So we've got 5 business values, 2 of which are those of care and of tolerance. So my lot are bored of me nagging them about it, but if you've got values, you just have to do stuff with them. So if you say that you've got a business value of care, how does that demonstrate itself, amongst your people, towards candidates wanting to join your business? If you have a business value of tolerance, and somebody in your organization, life goes off track for them a little bit, or something difficult happens, how does that value actually show up in your leadership of those people, your responses, your reactions, your policies? Because if it's not there for them, then just stop talking about having those values. So I think it's a broader kind of philosophical point, almost about the kind of organization you want to be, the stake you want to put in the ground. And you're going to mess it up, and you're going to have people say that's not good enough, or that's not enough, or you've used the wrong turn of phrase there, or you're focusing a lot on this particular demographic. Why aren't you focusing on us over there? We've only got so much resource, we can only do one thing at a time. But I think it starts at that point. Just what kind of employer, what kind of leadership group do we want to be?
And I think actually tracing it back to values is a it's the core of the business, isn't it? If those are your values, those are the standards to which you're operating, and what should guide you in everything you do. So I think that's sometimes, I don't know, it's perhaps in some organisations easy to forget what your values are if they're not as embedded as I, from my experience with dealing with LifeSearch, that they are very much embedded within your work, and sort of saying your purpose is protecting people properly. Well, that sort of extends to your colleagues as well, making sure that they're in a position where they can do that for your customers, but also that they're looked after. So I think it's it is a cultural aspect, really, isn't it?
And I think, just going back to my performance management point earlier, that in itself is a performance management measure of our leaders. Of course, we'll be celebrating them if they achieve their commission goal for the month, or they delivered their IT project on time. But actually, you do that in the spirit of our values, by making sure that your moment-to-moment choices as a leader, but actually any colleague in our business, those moment-to-moment choices always power our values, in terms of what you say, how you behave, what you're doing, and that you should never ever do anything to damage those values. And if you do, we've got a performance conversation to have, because that's equally as important to us as it is you achieving your commission figure or delivering your IT project. It's the way you go about it, and the way you show up, that's important as well.
And I mean, I think listening to you say that, I think that's translatable to any business in any walk of life, or any organization in any walk of life. I mean, Yeah, well, obviously, my most direct experiences in terms of running a business and the management side are within a law firm. Within a law firm, obviously, the success of the law firm is often measured on the financial success of the law firm, but there are lots of other elements to the roles that we all do that equally need to be celebrated and are part of doing what we do. So sometimes it's easy to lose track of the other elements if you're just focused on the bottom line, for example. But it's
someone said
important.
to us once, it was a number of years ago now, but I heard it repeated elsewhere, so maybe it's becoming a little bit more common. But and I've now forgotten it. That's a good introduction, Andy. But was people, profits, and then something else. But then we had a little moment where we were very focused on other things, and Tom twisted it into planet, people, and profits, as in just generally doing good for everyone around you. The way that you carry yourself through life outside of work as well as inside of work. Making sure that that has the right impact on people around you, be that colleagues, customers, and if you just focus on just doing good all day long, hopefully the only logical outcome is a pretty decent business with pretty decent results.
Yeah. And I mean, if nothing else, I always tend to say if you generally if you do good by other people and those around you, it leaves you feeling probably better about things and having a better mindset when you get to the end of the day and you look back and think, was that a good day or not? If you've had positive experiences, then you probably think the day as a whole has been a positive one.
And that's where the kind of say yes thing comes in the sense of, I don't think I would sleep especially comfortably if I found out that, I don't know, we dismissed somebody because their performance was off because they'd had a difficult health diagnosis, and there was clearly 8 more things we could have done for them, but we've moved to dismissal. That would not sit comfortably with me at all. Or there's a time where you have to draw a line, as we were touching on earlier. But you've just caused that person who's already going through some tough stuff in life even more tough stuff to go through. The loss of a job, the loss of an income, the loss of self-respect, potentially, taking a long time to get back into work, etc., etc. Just, why have we done that to somebody? It's just on a personal level that won't sit comfortably with me, and that's a values thing again.
Yeah, absolutely. There's, sometimes you have to make decisions that are, that are morally correct, beyond anything else. That's my philosophy in life anyway. Okay. Sort of final question from me. So looking back, what key lessons would you share with HR professionals and business leaders who want to improve disability inclusion but might not be sure about where to start, or that are worried about making mistakes along the way?
I think 3 things, and this one might sound a slightly glib answer to that, but start somewhere. So maybe as a leadership group, you need to have that discussion that I was just talking about. Could we be a bit bolder? Could we be a bit more radical? You might need to define what that looks like, as in, I want to tackle this particular area, or I'd like us to do more work on recruitment, or I'd like to do more work on workplace culture, or training, or upskilling. Just find something, and then get some consensus from the leadership group that we want to be a bit bolder, we want to be a bit more radical, and then start with that one thing. There will be mistakes that you make, as I mentioned earlier. Saying the wrong thing, using the wrong language, perhaps not giving enough airtime to a particular issue or topic that offends somebody over there, but at the same time thrills the 20 people over there that you are now doing something about it. You just know that that's going to come with the territory, but start somewhere. I think maybe to the second point, to try and perhaps reduce some of those mistakes, is to engage with specialists, be it your law firm, charities, anybody else. The amount of direction we've taken from different organizations has been really, really helpful, and it's not come at an awful lot of cost, as you were talking about earlier, Antonio. And even if it is just a kind of rubber stamp, what we're doing, that you're on track there, that sounds about right, or think about that before you start delivering that. just that's been really valuable. So yeah, have a look for external resources, specialists, just to help you on your way. And I think the last thing, which can't be overlooked, is just to ask your people.
Yeah.
We're 375 people, more diverse than we've ever been in just about every measure that we track. I don't know what the daily life experience is of a young Asian colleague who joined us in our Leeds office, a month ago, who's come from quite a disadvantaged background. I don't know what that life is like, so talk to us. So yeah, what do you need? How could this organization be better for you? We've launched a number of different kind of colleague networks, be it an autism group, a carers group, Pride Search, our LGBTQ plus group, and joining some of these calls and meetings. It's just wonderful listening to that openness, to your point earlier, Antonio, of people sharing experiences, sharing challenges. It's a wonderful thing just to listen to people engaging in that way. So employee networks, regular surveys, check-ins, focus groups, just get people to tell you what will work or what they need. Again, you can't do it all at once, so we're going to prioritize this, but we'll get to that. Just be open about where you're starting and why. That's an absolute goldmine, that stuff from your own people.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Yeah, I like that concept. It's not something I knew that you did, that you had, sort of networks for people within the organisation to be able to link up with each other, which I guess is important. Being across, three sites across the country as you are, but it gives a real sense of support and inclusion. I would imagine. And I think listening to people is actually it's a really important thing. So we've for those that don't know, we've recently become an employee owned business. We have an employee ownership trust that is the majority owner of the firm now. As part of that restructuring and layering that we've now put in around that, is we have an employee council that we didn't have before. And speaking from the perspective of someone who sits on our trust board, who they feed into, we're very much at the early days, but I'm so keen to listen to what people think and their opinions on what we do and what we offer as a firm. And I mean, one of the first things that we've asked them to look at as a body is, for example, look at our benefits. Are there things that we don't have that could benefit you or particular groups of individuals within our organisation? Are there things that we offer that actually, you don't value? In which case, why are we doing it? So that dialogue and that perception is really important, because you do view things very much from your own perspective. And I mean, even sort of, you because of carrying on my example, because you value a particular benefit that your organisation offers, you might not actually consider that benefit might not be even accessible to others, unless they tell you, "Oh, I'd like to use that, but could you get rid of this barrier that then allows me to do so?" Then as soon as you've heard that voice, certainly my immediate reaction is, well, what can we do about removing that barrier? It's not something that if you're not listening to those around you or coming at things with different perspectives, you're not going to learn.
I think that's really true. And on that, we did somewhat similar on the benefits point as well, because forever, we're going off topic a little, but we had a prescriptive list of benefits, and everybody gets these no matter who you are, and they're all the same terms and conditions for all of them. But then we launched another so it's kind of wellness group, if we can call it that, called Money Moguls, kind of focusing on financial well-being and financial support for colleagues, and then we started just to look at things from an age point of view to start with. Young folks, we're trying to get them into pensions and we're working really hard on that, but they do want a technology loan to get the new iPhone 17 that nobody needs because it's exactly the same as the 16, but they want it. We created a benefit where they can get technology loans, saving for deposits, even a tenancy deposit now, let alone a mortgage deposit. A tenancy deposit can be out of reach for some young folks, so creating a mechanism where they can do that and move out of the family home, but then right through to later career stages where you are thinking about drawing down your pension potentially, and what that looks like and how we can support you. Other benefits focused on older colleagues, just trying to break away from that you all get the same thing, because that just doesn't really work for everybody.
No. That's really good examples again. I'm conscious of time, and that we have said that we'd open up for a few questions. If you did have a question that you wanted to pose, please do put your hand up, or I'm not sure if there is a ability for Q&A. Oh yeah, we've got Helen. Could we switch on Helen's mic?
Hello, can you hear me?
Hello, Helen.
Hi. Really interesting conversation, and there are some bits of it which I absolutely love. This idea of can we just say yes, I think is such a mindset shift for some organisations, which would be enormously valuable for them. And also your conversation around values, in my experience, the businesses which really know how to work with their employees and their customers or clients are the businesses who are thoroughly engaged with their values, where when I go in and deliver training, the members of staff constantly refer back to, well, we do this because our values are. So it's so nice to hear those things reflected. But I think one of the barriers I experience most often to a lot of the things that you've talked about is something which I would say in some organisations verges on an obsession with not wanting to create a precedent. So they might have great intentions, but they're afraid to make adjustments for people, sometimes people with disabilities and sometimes just in the broader area of inclusion, because it will set a precedent, and what does that mean for everybody else? And I just wonder whether that's something you've had to navigate, and what was required in order to get people to understand, this huge gap we've got between can we just say yes and we're terrified to set a precedent.
Gosh, that is a really good question. I suppose we aim for consistency. So in the sense of the flexible working process that I talked about earlier, that would include reasonable adjustments. You can map out, basically give us your story, what's going on for you. That there may well be so it's precedent in inverted commas, because 6 weeks ago somebody else also was diagnosed with a health condition that meant they could no longer attend the office, and we granted it for them, but actually it wasn't the same. I'm making this up, by the way, but this is the kind of process we go through. But actually, it wasn't the same health condition. It wasn't diagnosed to the same severity. The medical evidence we've got back is kind of very different by the nature of the role that colleague has versus that colleague, and the responsibilities that they have. Office presence is much more fundamental in this role than it was in that one, hence us granting it. There will be things that probably overlap, but every one of our 375 people is different, and the circumstances in their entirety would be different. And whilst we can't disclose that to from leader A to leader B, this is why we're approving that, but we're declining that. I hope that they would just kind of trust us on that we've made a decent, well-informed decision. So I suppose precedent in the sense of it's helpful, to compare, reasonably similar circumstances or cases. But I think every colleague in every case should get their own outcome.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important when, as we've been saying, you don't just want to do the minimum, and I wouldn't be. I mean, certainly there's some circumstances. Well, I suppose if you're concerned about setting a precedent by doing something, it makes me question immediately whether actually it's reasonable for you to be doing it in the first place. So if you're feeling uncomfortable about making it, then that's a different situation. That's a different argument around the reasonableness. But not doing something and sort of setting the bar low again, it goes back to setting the bar low or setting the bar high. Do we want to do more, or do we just want to do the minimum? If we're wanting to do more, then I don't think we should be afraid of doing more because of whether that opens the door to other people to say, well, can you do a bit more for me? That's how I'd view it. It's it is trying to have a bit more sort of a progressive mindset from that perspective as well. But clearly there will be financial implications about doing certain things, or equally there might be there may be difficulties in providing a service where you genuinely do need a relatively high percentage of people carrying out the role, for example, to be office based. So whilst you could say yes to 5 or 6 people, if 10 or 15 come and ask the same question, it then becomes harder to manage, and then you just have to look at the merits of each situation.
And I think sometimes the tendency is to focus on the risk of making the adjustment rather than the reward. And I think what's come across very strongly here today is about that the openness of the communication is essential to let everybody see that it is a two-way street. So it's been really helpful. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Helen. I don't see any other questions, so I will bring us to a close there. Thank you again for those who attended. Thank you so much to Andrew for giving up your time to do this with us. It's I think an important topic, and you've added a lot of insight and knowledge to the conversation we're having. So thank you so much, we'll look forward to speaking to everyone again soon. But thank you very much for your time today. Thank you.